So on page 210 here of a primer on communication studies, there begins an explanation of proxemics, and it's broadly defined here as how space and distance influences communication. This is really important in understanding how to stage conflict in your dramatic work, not just how to script dialogue, but how to make sure your dialogue is going to come alive in the space that your characters occupy, how you're using the stage the space, and how the characters are influenced by the space in which they exist. Where are they in that space in relationship to each other, and why? So I see students craft scenes that take place in very particular environments without really utilizing them. A setting should not be arbitrarily chosen. So like Susie and Jim go to a pizza joint, and all they do there is discuss whether or not they should drop a class that's taught by their really boring professor. So their dialogue devolves into something that's separate from the scenery and the properties and the set pieces and the tables and the chairs and the actors playing the wait staff, and everything becomes gratuitous in the environment. So select an environment that has like great dramatic potential to help drive a conflict between your characters, and really use it. Don't let us forget where we are. So if your scene unfolds against like a superficial backdrop, or if it could easily, shift and take place in another location without losing very much, then you haven't really done your job. So consider, for example, why Edward Albee brings Peter and Jerry together in Central Park in the zoo story. How does the park serve as an effective location to expose and build and escalate the conflict that erupts between them? Notice that Albee repeatedly brings in third factors like the zoo and the bench to make this happen. And the environment becomes absolutely integral to the action. So you want to integrate your environment that you choose very meaningfully together completely with the action of your piece. So this brings us back to Proxemics, where your characters are in relationship to each other inside that space that you've chosen, whether they are on the set. Of course, where they are on the set can depend on your director in the future, but when you're crafting the scene that the set will ultimately realize or represent, it's up to you to stage this now in the writing process, in the theater in your head. All right, so check the Proxemics discussion in the communications primer and see how it points to variable definitions of personal space, something that can vary from person to person, the same way it can from character to character. But the primer establishes a range between 1.5 and 4 feet as a general estimate for what individuals might consider like their personal space bubble. Think about, for a second, what you regard to be your personal bubble space, and remember a time when it might have been invaded, either like getting attacked by a cologne salesperson who sprays you with some fragrance, or getting shoved or smushed on a crowded subway. The primer defines territoriality here on page 215 as the drive to take up and defend spaces, even in public areas, and especially in public areas like Central Park. So when Jerry encroaches on Peter's personal space in the zoo story, conflicts between them escalate, and they're underscored by the symbolic negotiation of territory. I mean, of course, the play is not simply about who took a park bench from whom, but the bench behaves as a vehicle for playing out the larger conflicts between them, including who these men are for themselves, to each other, and in society. And of course, that opens to a wide variety of subtextual interpretations. So let's look at some dialogue.